In several hours, Roger Federer and Juan Del Potro are going to face off in the finals at the U.S. Open. And before we talk about that match, let's go back to yesterday and talk about Del Potro's total beatdown of Nadal, 2-2-2. Now, what Del Pot did, which was really effective, obviously, since he totally destroyed Rafa, was he kind of went back to Robin Soderling's playbook from the French Open, the fourth round of the French Open where he beat Rafa. By the way, remember these icons, circle's a player, stick is the side of the body they're hitting on, so this would be a lefty's forehand. And during neutral rallies, Del Pot would keep the ball more or less in the middle of the court. Same thing Soderling did. And what that prevented Rafa from doing, particularly on the forehand, is cut down on the angles. So when Rafa's hitting in the middle of the court, he can't really pull Del Pot as far off the court as he would like. If he's hitting over here, well, now he has that angle. And, you know, Rafa hits some short forehands, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Lots of topspin, but short, lands somewhere around the service line. But if you're angling it, that's great, because then you pull your opponent off the court, and they are in terrible position. But if you don't have that angle, and you're hitting in the middle of the court, well, now those balls landing at the service line, any ball that lands short, is a liability, particularly for a guy that is 6'6". Soderling is 6'4", so those balls would kick up real high, and that's not going to give those guys much trouble. Someone like Federer gives them trouble. He's only about 6'1", 6'2", one-handed backhand. Hard to control that. For a guy as big and strong as Del Pot, well, that's right in his wheelhouse. So on those short balls, if he had a backhand, Del Pot also hits real flat. So the ball's above the net. He can hit that flat ball and really hit through it. And he would just crack the ball from corner to corner, and he was running Rafa all over the court. And the other thing about Rafa is he likes to typically start from a defensive position, and then you'll see him slowly work his way up to the baseline when he's transitioning to offense. Well, if he is playing defense to start and he's being kept on defense by Del Pot, then he has a ton of real estate to cover, and it's going to be hard for him to take control of the point, and he's not going to win many points unless Del Pot or Soderling or whoever misses, and of course that wasn't happening. So that was one of the reasons that Del Potro was really able to dominate this match. The final point I want to make is that I don't think Rafa's injury played into this match, the results, too much. Sure, his serve wasn't up to snuff, but his serve is not a huge weapon, and the bottom line is that Del Potro had the perfect game plan, and he had amazing execution. I mean, the guy barely made a mistake. He was running Rafa from side to side, and Del Potro just kind of has the game that is Rafa's kryptonite, like we talked about before. You know, the same way that Rafa is kind of Federer's kryptonite with that high kicker to the backhand, well, that plays, like I said before, right into Del Potro's hands, or Soderling's, or those other guys. So Del Potro just has the perfect game to beat Rafa. He executed great, and even if Rafa was at 100%, I still think Del Potro wins this match because the guy is a fantastic tennis player. He's only going to get better, and by the end of his career, I expect him to have several, if not more, majors. I mean, this guy is really, really good. So now let's talk about today's final, today's match. Del Potro versus Federer. Who's going to win? I think Federer in 4 sets, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was straights. Now, I just talked about how awesome Del Potro was playing, but Federer is playing even more awesome. This guy, I mean, we all saw the between-the-leg shot yesterday, but I think the larger issue here is that Federer's game matches up pretty well with Del Potro. Del Potro's not going to get high kicking balls to his forehand or his backhand that he can turn on, and Federer is actually going to hit him a lot of slices. Now, I did a video maybe a couple months ago about how Federer uses his backhand to set up his forehand, and we'll probably see that today. You'll get Fed hitting a variety, you know, he'll go slice, then maybe topspin, and then slice. He'll alternate. I expect him to use the slice a lot with Del Potro to get him, to make Del Potro bend down in 6-6. That can be tough to do over the course of a 5-set match. But Federer will give him that slice, and then and then Del Potro, he's going to have to put a little more spin on the ball, not hit it quite as hard to make sure he can get it up and then down. And Fed will then run around that shot and hit either an inside-out forehand over here or an inside-in forehand over there. And unlike Rafa, Federer's forehand is extremely hard, but more importantly, it penetrates the court. It moves through the court much more effectively than Rafa's forehand. So Del Potro is going to be on the move. He's not going to be as set up, with his base set on balance to take huge cuts at the tennis ball like he was able to do against Rafa's ground strokes. So this is the main exchange I think we'll see. It's kind of Federer's bread and butter. I mean, he does this against most people, so I expect him to use this with great effect against Del Potro. And yesterday, Federer's forehand was ridiculous. I mean, as soon as that guy got a look, he was in control of the point, and Djokovic didn't really stand a chance. And keep in mind, Djokovic played a very good match, but towards the end, you could kind of tell Djokovic was saying to himself, he threw his hands up, what else do I have to do to win a point off of this guy? The other thing Federer is going to do is stand pretty close to the baseline when he's returning serve. Rafa, of course, is almost in the bleachers when he returns serve. Well, Fed's going to be up on the baseline, and that's going to allow him to do a couple things. First of all, he'll be more effective at cutting off out wide and down the tee serves. There won't be as big of an angle for Delpo to work with. And second of all, the balls that that Federer does get back, and keep in mind, Delpo is going to win a lot of points off of his serve. He's got a great serve. But when Fed does make a return, his positioning is much better. He's not over here virtually off camera, and then he has to recover all the way over here. He gives Delpo a pretty big target to hit at. Federer is going to be in a much more manageable position, and so he's going to have more points when he gets the return in that start off on a neutral footing. Finally, you have Federer's serve, and Fed's going to win a lot of free points off of his first serve, off of aces, off of unreturned serves, and even when Delpo gets the return in, those returns aren't going to be particularly aggressive, and Federer's going to be in control of most of those points. Now, this was an area yesterday where I thought Rafa's abdominal injury really did come into play, because Rafa's serve, in terms of his miles per hour, was significantly down, and that allowed Delpo to be aggressive with a lot of returns. But to come back to Federer and Delpo today, 4 sets like I said before. I don't think this is Del Potro's year. I think he will win majors in the future, but Federer is playing out of his mind right now, and I think the only guy that's going to beat Roger Federer at the U.S. Open this year is Roger Federer if he kind of lets himself become unhinged or lose his focus. So, match starts in a couple hours. Looking forward to it. Also looking forward to reading your comments. Please post below and let me know what you think.